The story begins with a blind date that changed everything. Mandy, a smart but calculating woman, wanted a better future for her unborn child. So she used that carefully planned date to pressure an honest, naive man named Frank into taking responsibility. Her plan worked. 5 months later, she gave birth to a healthy, lively baby and confidently demanded that Frank step up as the father. Frank, guided by his strong sense of duty, willingly married Mandy. But married life was nothing like he imagined. Mandy never cared about the house, dressed up every day, left early, came home late, and sometimes stayed out all night. Standing alone in their quiet home, Frank stared into the darkness outside, overwhelmed by confusion and disappointment. He began to suspect that this seemingly proper woman was far less innocent than he once believed. One night, Frank finally gathered the courage to follow her. What he saw, her unacceptable behavior outside, hit him like a bucket of ice water. What hurt most was that even when confronted, Mandy showed no remorse at all, only coldness and disdain. Frank's dignity shattered, and in a moment of anger, he lost control and pushed her to the ground. No one expected that fall to cause a fatal head injury. Shocked and terrified, Frank suddenly felt a drop of water fall on Mandy's forehead. That moment snapped him back to reality. His baby was still in the bathtub upstairs. Panicking, he ran, but it was too late. The child had drowned, and Frank's entire world collapsed. He was later charged with causing the deaths of his wife and child and sentenced to 25 years in prison. 5 years later, during an appendectomy, Frank seized an opportunity and escaped. Trying to dodge the police, he took a young boy hostage at a convenience store and forced the boy's mother, Adele, to drive him home. Worried sick for her son's safety, Adele complied. Gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands, she stayed silent the whole way, fighting back fear. Even when a patrol car passed by with flashing lights, she didn't dare make a move, because Henry, her son, was the only thing that mattered at that moment. Perhaps Frank could feel the deep love Adele had for her son, because he never made things difficult for them. When they arrived at the house, he gently told her he wasn't a violent person and would never hurt anyone. He just needed a place to rest and would leave once it got dark. To keep Adele and Henry from getting dragged into trouble, he suggested a small disguise, pretending that he had tied her up. Even though Adele was still tense and anxious, she and Henry had no choice but to cooperate. But when Frank wrapped the rope around her, he handled it with extreme care, moving slowly so he wouldn't hurt her. In the kitchen, as he prepared lunch, he even blew on the food to cool it before feeding her small bites. Watching this gentle and considerate man, Adele could hardly reconcile him with the fugitive described on the news. Henry watched from the side, confused as well. Maybe this man wasn't as cold or dangerous as everyone believed. As night deepened, Frank finally loosened the ropes around Adele's wrists. He planned to slip away quietly, but the sound of sirens outside told him police patrols had increased. He had no choice but to wait for another safe moment. The next morning, Frank woke early and made a hearty breakfast for Adele and Henry. The warm meal not only stirred their appetite but also softened the barrier Henry had held toward him. Henry no longer felt afraid. Instead, he felt a strange mix of respect and curiosity. "How did you escape?" he finally asked. Frank replied calmly, "I told the guard that if he left, I'd jump out the window." He stepped out for a smoke. Funny thing, truth can be more convincing than a lie. His tone was gentle yet steady, like a father teaching a child how to stay calm in danger. As their conversation deepened, Frank suddenly asked, "How could anyone walk away from a woman like your mom?" Henry answered quietly, "He left with his assistant." In that delicate, warm atmosphere, Adele picked up the rope and walked toward Frank, offering to be tied up again. But Frank softly told her it wasn't necessary anymore. He explained that if he were ever caught, the rope could serve as proof that he never meant to harm them. His calm and gentle manners slowly eased Adele's guarded heart. At Henry's urging, she took a small bite of the breakfast Frank made. She chewed slowly, and a tender light flickered in her eyes, as if a long-lost sense of safety and warmth was quietly returning to her life. To repay the trust Adele and her son had given him, Frank took it upon himself to handle the chores. He cleared the leaves piled on the roof, fixed the broken steps, and even helped Henry repair Adele's beloved car. Through all this work, Frank guided Henry like a real father, patiently teaching him how to protect his mother and stay brave when it mattered most. Every word he spoke and every action he made carried a deep sense of responsibility. Not just practical lessons, but the warmth of someone living with regret and trying to offer what he once lost. From morning until dusk, Frank trained with Henry, showing him how to swing a baseball bat with strength. The focus and care on his face looked just like a father teaching his son essential life skills. For Henry, who had grown up without a father figure, this warmth meant everything. Adele watched quietly from the side, feeling emotions she had never felt before. The man she once feared was now revealing a dependable, gentle side that slowly softened her heart. Little by little, the two of them almost forgot that Frank was a wanted man. Adele even took out her sewing kit and carefully mended the tear in Frank's pants, each stitch filled with unspoken care. Frank, touched by her kindness, gently asked about the old injury on her leg. Just as the atmosphere between them grew warmer, a knock on the door broke the calm. Frank instantly tensed and whispered for Henry to handle the visitor. Henry opened the door to find their new neighbor standing there with a basket of peaches, kindly warning them that a fugitive was in the area. It was the perfect chance to report Frank, but Henry made up an excuse and sent the neighbor away. Frank watched and praised Henry warmly, speaking with the tone of a proud father. Adele saw the moment unfold, and deep down, her trust and dependence on Frank had quietly taken root. To thank Adele and Henry for their care, Frank suggested using the peaches to teach them how to bake a fruit pie. It was a treasured family recipe, and now he was willing to share it with people he believed deserved it. In the sunlit kitchen, the three of them moved through the warm light like a real family. Frank stood behind Adele, gently guiding her hands as she kneaded the dough. Every accidental touch, every perfectly timed glance, sent a soft tremor through Adele's heart. A quiet warmth she hadn't felt in years. Henry watched silently, sensing the emotional ripple within his mother. He couldn't fully understand the subtleties, but he knew one thing. Both he and his mother had already accepted Frank into their lives. Frank had given Henry the fatherly warmth he longed for, and for Adele, he rekindled a hope she thought she would never feel again. As the days passed, life for Frank, Adele, and Henry slipped into a brief but gentle period of calm. But Frank's identity hung over them like a looming blade, forcing them to stay cautious at all times. One day, their neighbor Evelyn hurried over and left her son Barry at Adele's door, asking her to look after him. Adele hesitated, but Evelyn rushed off before she could respond, leaving her no choice but to take on the extra responsibility. Frank stepped in without hesitation, taking care of Barry and playing baseball with the two boys in the backyard. Under the warm sunlight, the laughter and cheers of the children quietly filled the emptiness and sorrow that had lingered in Adele's heart for years. But peace never lasts. That evening, when Evelyn returned to pick up Barry, the TV happened to be reporting news about Frank. Barry instantly recognized the man in the broadcast as the one who played with him earlier. He tried to alert his mother, shouting in panic, but she misunderstood him completely. She simply thought he was being dramatic about the TV and scolded him before taking him home. The close call cast a shadow over the three of them, reminding them that time was running out. Frank knew he couldn't stay any longer, but he also couldn't bear the thought of putting Adele and Henry in danger. So he and Adele began planning an escape, one that would protect the mother and son while giving Frank a chance to survive. But Adele still had worries in her heart. She needed to know whether Frank could truly accept someone who carried painful scars from the past. She opened up to Frank, sharing everything she had never dared to say aloud. That after giving birth to Henry, she became pregnant again but lost the baby. That she could no longer have children. And that Henry's father couldn't accept it and eventually left, starting a new family elsewhere. These experiences plunged Adele into darkness for years, and only Henry's presence helped her regain her strength. She told Frank that leaving now meant letting go of the past and embracing a new beginning. Her only regret was that she couldn't give Frank more children, that she couldn't give him what she believed was a complete family. Frank listened quietly, then spoke with a steady, gentle voice. "You already have one." The words fell into her heart like a stone dropped into a still lake, sending ripples through years of closed-off pain. It soothed her fears and made her feel truly seen and understood for the first time. In the days that followed, Adele and Frank carefully prepared their escape plan, while Henry watched from the sidelines. He had overheard their conversation, and it stirred in him a sense of responsibility and desire to help. He went to the library, borrowing maps and guides, hoping to chart a safer, more complete route for them. There, he met a girl around his age named Eleanor, and their stories quietly intertwined. Eleanor's life was also filled with hardship. Her mother's new partner had forced her out of the house, leaving her with nowhere to go. Listening to Henry speak about his mother and Frank, she deeply resonated with their struggles, as if fate connected two young hearts. Eleanor told Henry honestly, "I see hope in your family, but you have to let him go. Otherwise, he might end up hurting you." Henry fell silent, her words echoing painfully in his mind. When he returned home, he saw Frank and Adele dancing together. And the joy on Adele's face made him realize something. His mother was no longer trapped by her past. And Frank, despite his complicated circumstances, had truly become part of their lives. Henry chose to support them, feeling a calm trust he had never known before. At dawn, before the sun fully rose, Adele and Henry began packing their bags, making the final preparations for their escape. Henry carried one small wish in his heart. Before they left, he hoped to see Eleanor one last time, to share the happiness he'd rediscovered because of his mother and Frank, and to say goodbye. During this brief meeting, Henry accidentally revealed parts of the escape plan, and Eleanor quickly pieced together the truth. Henry's mother's partner was the man the police were searching for. Though Henry panicked, Eleanor reassured him, promising she would never tell anyone. Before parting, she gave him a shy, gentle kiss, a quiet understanding, and a blessing for the road ahead. When Henry returned home, he sat down to write a letter to his father. Not a letter of blame, but one filled with warmth and forgiveness. He wrote about accepting the past and about his hope for the future. While Frank and Adele were busy, Henry slipped away to his father's house and placed the letter in the mailbox. As soon as the letter dropped in, he felt a peace he had never experienced before. But fate always adds tension at the worst moment. On his way back, Henry was spotted by a police officer who had long paid close attention to Adele. The officer insisted on driving Henry home for his safety, leaving Henry with no choice but to comply. Seeing her son step out of the patrol car, Adele's heart tightened with fear. But fortunately, the officer was simply concerned about the boy and reminded them to be cautious of a fugitive in the area. From upstairs, Frank saw everything and grew alarmed. They needed to move soon, or they'd lose their chance. To avoid further suspicion, Frank suggested Adele withdraw money from the bank so they would have enough to survive on the road. But once they arrived, they ran into an unexpected rule. Large cash withdrawals required a valid explanation. Questioned by the staff, Adele grew nervous and began trembling, and the situation nearly fell apart. At the critical moment, Henry cleverly used a tactic Frank had taught him, telling the truth in a way that would be misunderstood. "We're emptying the account because we're planning to run off like Bonnie and Clyde." The staff laughed, taking it as a joke, and the tense moment dissolved. Meanwhile, Frank was upstairs fixing a light when neighbor Evelyn suddenly walked in. Thinking on his feet, he told her he was a repairman Adele had hired, and she believed him, leaving without further suspicion. Adele and Henry soon returned home, but the sound of sirens grew louder outside. Frank knew then, this time, there was no escaping it. Adele, desperate, urged him to run before it was too late. But Frank understood that if he left alone, Adele and Henry might face danger. He pulled her into a tight embrace and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." In that brief, heartfelt goodbye, he tied Adele's wrists again, a gesture meant for her safety, and a final expression of the responsibility he had carried from the beginning. Frank was eventually taken into custody, and because he ran and held someone against their will, another 10 years were added to his sentence, making it a total of 20. Adele did everything she could on the outside, trying to find a lawyer who could clear Frank's name, but all she got in return were cold responses and warnings. After enduring the struggle for a long time, she was forced to make a painful choice. She had to temporarily let go of her attachment to him. Even so, she never truly cut off her feelings. She kept visiting Frank and sending him letters filled with warmth and care. Frank, not wanting to hold Adele back from finding happiness, kept his distance, hoping she would rebuild her life. The world around them was harsh, yet those 3 days they spent together still shone like sparks in all three of their hearts. Time went on. Under Frank's guidance, Henry grew up, sharpened his baseball skills, and later found a life partner, thanks in part to the practical lessons Frank had taught him. 20 years later, Henry had become a steady, grounded young man running a successful bakery, using Frank's fruit pie recipe to carry on that warmth passed down to him. As Frank's release day approached, Henry received a letter from him. "I hope you still remember me. That Labor Day weekend we spent together was the best 5 days of my life. I often wondered what you'd grow up to be. Then one day, I found you again, in a familiar slice of pie." In the letter, Frank once more promised that, if life gave him the chance, he would protect Adele's heart and never let her be hurt again. Henry knew his mother, Adele, had waited at home for 20 years. The bridge she and Frank had built with patience and hope had finally brought two wandering hearts back together. Fate eventually led them to reunite. Two souls separated for years met again, clearly reflected in each other's eyes. That simple embrace carried the weight of countless nights of longing and waiting. Before they found each other again, both were trapped in their own emotional cages, but it was those very chains that tightly bound their destinies. Through the long journey of life, they became each other's source of warmth and hope, healing old wounds and moving forward side by side. True beauty never fades or betrays. It withstands the test of time, offering endless warmth and quiet joy. We grieve the moments once lost, yet celebrate the joy of reunion. The world may be chaotic, and some people may love many, but there are those who wait a lifetime for just one person. This love, which rises above the ordinary, doesn't just touch the heart, It makes us believe that real love can cross every barrier, overcome every hardship, and shine brightly across the years.